Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Adapt to Thrive series by Yenna. Today we're joined by Ed from PushFar, who can tell us all about his business in a second. We're looking to explore how the business is currently adapting to the corona crisis, and the good and the bad side of what may have happened. So welcome, Ed. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about PushFar.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ed Johnson, CEO and co-founder of PushFar. We run a mentoring platform, one of the largest mentoring platforms in the world. We've got two propositions. We have the open network, which is free for individuals to volunteer to either be mentors or be mentored or do both. And then we license that technology into companies looking at running internal mentoring schemes.
Nice. So what's the why behind that? Where did that idea come from? There's probably a story there, and I'm curious as to what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was looking for a mentor myself about 2.5 years ago, and just kind of realized that I was at a point where I wanted some sort of direction in my career. I was looking at, what that might be, and I realized that I needed a mentor or some kind of guidance in terms of next steps and how to progress and to develop my career. And realized that actually it's not easy to find a mentor. The question I often ask is, look, where do you go to find a mentor? And the answer that I get back is, well, people say networking or looking through their own personal connections and things. And that takes a lot of time, and trying to work out who is willing to be a mentor, who's got the time to do it, who's got the right background and experience. It all takes time and effort and isn't easy. So kind of went online and was sort of expecting there to be some sort of a platform to connect people. Didn't find anything, so I thought, well, let's build this. And then sort of in the initial stages of kind of research and development, we realized, myself and my co-founder Gabriel realized that actually organizations were struggling with mentoring too. So that brought in the second kind of part of the proposition, and therefore the business model as well for us, which was that all these organizations that are running internal mentoring schemes, they're doing so through Excel spreadsheets, and it's just a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, we just decided that we were going to build something to fix the problem that I was having and that seemingly a lot of other people were having.
Interesting. Okay, so I have two questions that come off the back of that. The first one is around the model. You said you kind of built it and then realized there was a model there. Was that an inkling of yours already, or did you do, I guess, what's now a kind of a classic approach of build a platform, build a community, and then figure it out as you go along?
I had a feeling that there was an issue there. My background's not in HR, and it's not in learning and development, so I couldn't be certain about it. But what I did was make sure that I was having those conversations with those individuals as early on as possible. So I was already set on building a platform to help individuals, and I knew that there was going to be a revenue stream somewhere with that, whether that was looking at kind of recruitment solutions for the individuals, looking at helping them to progress their career, some kind of premium version of that. And then quickly realized that actually licensing this technology out to companies was the way to go, and was an easy sell. And I realized I was able to have conversations with heads of HR and heads of learning and development at large companies who were interested in what we were building. So I knew instantly that there was that. So we didn't build the community, and we didn't build the platform without knowing that it existed. But had it not existed, I'd still built the open network, I suppose.
Sure, no, that's amazing. Then that leads into my other question, which is around supply and demand. Lots of people want help. Lots of people, recognize they need help to progress. But I wonder if there's enough demand. We've actually got an example of this within the community already in the likes of Helpful Peeps, who launched in Bristol, and Bristol being a really collaborative place, just like many other places around the country. They actually were surprised when they launched that they had too many people wanting to help other people and not enough actual demand from people that seemed a little bit too humble to ask for things. I wonder if it's around the other way for you, or if there is a really nice balance in how you've achieved that.
It was a concern before we launched. We were kind of like, we're going to launch this, and what if we have 5,000 mentees looking for mentors and no mentors? And to begin with, I was doing a lot of mentoring myself. But actually pretty quickly, as in within the first sort of month and a half, we just saw people. We made it really easy for people to sign up as both mentors and mentees, and we kind of pushed people towards that. Well, if you're looking for a mentor, why don't you consider helping and mentoring other people? And it kind of organically grew in a really nice way there. We still have more mentees than mentors, but what we find is that a lot of mentors are willing to mentor 2 or 3 people, so it offsets really nicely. And we're now at kind of a critical mass stage where actually we have enough people kind of joining the whole time and volunteering to help others that we've got kind of a sustainable list, which is good. But it was definitely a concern to begin with, and the plan that we had in place was very much, okay, we've got a few different ad campaigns targeting potential mentors and a few targeting mentees, and we can move ad budget around depending on what numbers we have and how many people we need to drive to certain things. But actually we didn't really need to utilize that too much. We just had a plan in place should the worst happen.
So then my next question will, before we dive into the crux of the matter right now, is around how you see the dynamics of users. Are they either mentors or mentees, or more of a philosophical question, I guess, around the fact that people can be both depending on their relative position in a workplace? Is that something you're seeing, that people are representing both sides too?
Yeah, I mean, we as a business and me as an individual will always try and push people to be both. I think everyone can add value, everyone can help, everyone can be a mentor, and everyone's got experience. And I think particularly in the startup world and the entrepreneurship world, actually, if you can learn from failure, then great. But actually, if you can learn from the failure of others as well, you're gonna develop so much more quickly, and you're going to avoid so many mistakes, and you're going to save so much money. And all the books that I've read about entrepreneurship and everything are about how you can learn from failure and use that to your advantage. So what we say is, well, look, learn from your own failure, but learn from the failure of others as well. And if we come together as a collective and we can all share that knowledge, then great. And I think that applies to any industry and any career and any job. So for career mentoring, whether we're talking about people who are in the financial sector or in tech or as entrepreneurs, or even like we've got people on our platform who are musicians and actors and things, actually they can all add value as mentors and mentees. So we do encourage them to be both.
That's amazing. The idea that you've got people across different sectors hadn't really occurred to me. You've got obviously the professional services sector, but everybody needs a mentor in different fields. And if you're a management accountant, you might want to learn the guitar. So there's some way you can. I know your company works really quite remote. You've got a development team overseas, and I'll ask you to explain a little bit more about that. But we're in a public health crisis right now. We're all in lockdown. I'm doing these videos from my flat, as you can see, and yourself from the room there. I'm wondering how that's affected you. Because you've built a digital platform that enables mentoring digitally, has it affected you at all? Has it been positive? However, if you're looking at the B2B sector as a route to market, people aren't in offices anymore, and so do they need it more or less? How has coronavirus affected your business?
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky, as you say. We built the platform from day one as a remote team. It was partly because my co-founder is based in Romania. He wasn't when we started this, but he is Romanian, so he decided to move back there and set up the development team out there. So there's been an element for the last 2 and a bit years of remote working anyway, a big element of it. And the other thing was I didn't want to pay for co-working space to begin with either. Didn't feel I needed to. And so actually, as the team has kind of grown more out in Romania than in the UK, but a bit of both. We've always been remote, I suppose, so that hasn't really affected us, which has been lucky. The biggest difference is that the sales meetings that I was having, and when I was going to pitch PushFar to businesses, I was going into their offices around London and around the UK generally as well. They're now remote, but that doesn't really seem to be a huge difference. And then in terms of kind of supply and demand, we're seeing an uplift in the number of individuals signing up to PushFar and signing up for mentoring. And we're certainly trying to promote that, and the idea that, actually if you are remote working, or even if you're furloughed or you've been made redundant, now's the time to invest in yourself and in your career and getting into mentoring, whether you're as a mentor or a mentee. And then on the company side, we're seeing a few organizations really trying to push mentoring to their employees. In fact, one of the big food retailers that we work with, Itsu, they're obviously, almost all of their sort of restaurants now have closed, and they're pushing mentoring more than they have done before, because now is the right time to actually keep those employees engaged, and mentoring is a great way of doing that. In terms of the new business side of things and having conversations with people and trying to sign deals, I think across the board that's just harder because no one has any budget and no one, but we're still finding that people do want to talk, which isn't a bad thing. And it just means that when we come out of this, whether that's 3-6 months, however long, 2 months, who knows, that hopefully we can pick up those conversations, and that will be the right time for people to get involved with mentoring.
It's amazing to hear the fact that, businesses as big as household names like Itsu are doubling down on this during this time, and amazing to hear that you're working with them. I hope you don't mind me saying, but I guess PushFar is still relatively early in its journey. You've probably got a really grand vision for it, and you're already rocketing ahead. Excuse the pun, because I know there's a rocket in your logo. Subliminal. I'm curious as to the position of the company right now. So I know that you've just recently announced a fundraise, and we're seeing some people talk about how fundraising is pretty remarkable during a public health crisis. But I wonder if you might be able to demystify some of that for us, and tell us a little bit about the journey and how that's gone, and yeah, a little bit about the brand if possible.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first thing to say is I think we're certainly punching above our weight in terms of how old we are as a business. And I think that's just been a case of being kind of one of the first to market in the first place, and not being afraid of having those conversations and knocking on doors to larger companies. Because if you've got something that they want, it doesn't really matter how big you are as a business, as long as you can offer it and you can offer it well and do it properly. Then in terms of kind of how we've managed to fundraise, we had all of our investors lined up and ready to go before the markets all crashed and before things really kicked off. And I remember, I think it was on the Thursday, I think the markets took a big hit on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and on the Thursday I kind of thought we just need to close. And I kind of don't really realize, I don't really know now what I was waiting for. I think I was waiting for a couple of emails back from a couple of investors just confirming something, and I just thought, let's just do it as quickly as possible before. And one of our investors is a senior stockbroker at a big bank, so I was sort of terrified that they were all going to pull out, and it was very much a case of, well, let's just close quickly. So I'm really glad I'm not having those conversations now. I'm really, because it is a tough time. I think investing in good times is difficult. Trying to raise investment in times like this is even more impossible. When it's, how do you get in front of people when you're locked down and you're indoors? That being said, I think when it obviously depends what the proposition is. So I think some investors are looking at this time at the moment as an opportunity to invest in innovative new ideas and new technology and things. I know one of our investors is still kind of investing actively, or looking at investing actively in kind of tech firms primarily at the moment. So it is still possible. I'm glad that we closed when we did, and we're very fortunate that we did. Yeah, and I think as we're a tech company, that didn't affect things.
Sure. So do you have any advice from that experience then that you can pass on to anybody that might be considering raising now? And it could be, regardless of the public health crisis, that if you did it again, would you close faster? Would you create more perceived time limits, or are there any kind of little tidbits? And I have another question around advice that you can give, because in a second, but curious about that first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've got the investors lined up and they've said they're willing to, then get signatures ASAP. And if they're not responding to emails, there's that for me, it was that danger of not wanting to push them too much, because I knew they were already busy and I knew they'd verbally committed, and I kind of had a sense that they weren't going to pull out of the deals. But at the same time, yeah, I'd probably have pushed them a bit harder to just get things signed quicker.
How do you know? I think people are probably going to be watching this and going, yeah, I feel like I probably should be pushing slightly harder, but how do you know? Is it gut? Is there a signal? Is there something that you use?
For me, it was the fact that quite a lot of our investors were introductions from our existing investors, or they were reinvesting and they'd already invested in our first round. So there was already that kind of personal connection and those introductions there. So I sort of had a feeling that I knew them on a kind of more personal level, I suppose, because they came from referrals from our existing investors. I I think, yeah, you've got to know your investors. You've got to have conversations with them. You've got to know who you're bringing onto your team, whether they're active investors and whether they're going to play an active part, or even if they're passive investors and they're just on your share certificate, on your cap table and have share certificates. You still want to know them. So it's a case of having those conversations. It's obviously harder, but have those at the moment, but have those Zoom conversations, have face-to-face calls when you can, and really understand. It sounds weird, but understand why they want to invest in you. Not just, don't just accept any money. We actually turned one investor down for reasons I kind of won't get into now, but we just kind of, it was one of those things that we just didn't want a collection of investors that we didn't think would kind of gel. And so you've got to know your investors, and you've got to feel comfortable with them.
Well, this really leads nicely into my next question, really, which was around building a cap table and subsequently, or before that, a board of fantastic people that can open doors and support you in the journey in building what is, a remarkable business. What's your advice on that? Because you've managed to bring together at quite an early stage a real collection of really interesting people to, I'm unsure if paid or voluntary, but give up time. Voluntary, good. Give up time to get involved in the company. How do you do, as somebody who maybe sat in their bedroom right now, probably because they're not allowed out, where do you begin to start to go, I really want this person who is pretty influential and maybe fairly well known on my board of advisors to, one, help me, and two, open some doors? You seem to be pretty good at it, so I'm curious if you've got any advice around that.
People love a story that they can get involved in. They don't want to be sold to. And then this goes for both. This sounds counterintuitive, but actually, people, even if you're selling to people, don't sell to people. Have a conversation with them. So we've got an advisory board and a board of directors. For our advisory board, they all have a background in HR and learning and development, so they were all interested in the idea of mentoring and what we were building, and I think they all really are excited about what we are creating, and it was about getting them excited and having those conversations. And initially, with all of the advisory board, it was very much a case of, let's have a call, I'd love to share what we're doing, would you be interested in finding out more? And it was kind of always a case of yes, which was good. And then it just kind of gradually grew from there. But it was about building those relationships. And I think that's the case, whether you're selling or you're inviting investors on board, or if you want advisors or anything like that. It's building those relationships and understanding what value you can add for them and what value they can add for you. And I think a lot of people just want to get involved with exciting, innovative, fresh new ideas and new things. And if you can actually build a community of people who are invested in that, then great. But it always starts with those conversations, and it always starts with I'd love to tell you about this, can we jump on a call? And then can we jump on another call? And it's not a case of, this is what I need, are you interested? Because 9 times out of 10 people say no, or they just won't reply. But actually, if you just engage with them on a one-to-one level and you say, look, I saw on your CV that you've got experience as an HR manager, I would love to speak to you about mentoring. That was my intro message to most of them. And it was a case of, yeah, absolutely.
Short, sweet, emotional, and it really gets into their
honest. Yeah.
Good. So you've got the remote team working quite smoothly. That seems great. The money's in. The board of directors are there. You're pushing ahead with your number of mentors and mentees, balancing out and starting to turn into something great. My final question is around what's next. What's next for PushFar, and where are you going in the short term? Relative to the public health crisis. What's on the roadmap, and what's next in the longer term?
I'm conscious of not wanting to burn our money too quickly, and I think I'd be conscious of that even if there wasn't a current crisis going on. We've tried to be incredibly lean in the first 2 years, and I don't think just because we've raised more money that should change at all. I think there's always the danger that when you raise more money, you think we've got loads in the bank, let's spend it, regardless of what's going on. I'm conscious that just can't happen. We've got to have a long road, runway. If we've seen the success we've seen, why kind of change things? We can sort of scale things to a certain extent, but actually I don't see us spending that much more money than we're already spending, because there's just no need. We could spend all that money in 6 months and probably get no further. So we're not going to change a lot. It just gives us more of a road, a sort of more of a runway. We can be more agile and slightly more aggressive in our scale up, but at the same time, I don't want to spend too much. And I think it's then just about continuing to try and engage with those companies that really want the best for their employees, that really want to engage with employees, that get mentoring, most companies already engaged with mentoring. It's a manual process. It's a bit of a pain. We want to be able to help wherever we can. So particularly at the moment, we want to help with the current crisis and the current climate for employees, but actually longer term as well. So at the moment, whilst we understand there's probably not going to be budget for a lot of HR teams and learning and development teams, if we can just have conversations and advise them on ways that they can really make the most of their mentoring schemes, then that's what we want to do, is just start forming those relationships and helping where we can. And as we come out of this, we'll, hopefully be in a strong position to really scale. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, super inspiring. I think, everybody will be jumping onto the website and signing up as either or both a mentor or a mentee right after this. If they want to do that, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So pushfar.com, and you can sign up free, as you say, Ash. And the last thing I want to say is just, Yen has been absolutely fantastic for me and for us. In fact, I recommended it to one of my mentees a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and she's joined as well. But I've been a member of Yenna since before we started PushFar, and it's been really, really valuable for us. So yeah,
amazing. Well, that was absolutely perfect as far as a recommendation goes. I'm going to soundbite that bit specifically and just share it everywhere, of course.
Absolutely.
But really kind of you to say that. And yes, one of your mentees has joined, and she's getting on really well. Has ended up building a website using one of the deals we have in the toolbox, and we've done some introductions for her with fellow events organizers, which is obviously something that I know she's really passionate about and working within. So yeah, there's some really great stuff, and I think I'm jumping on one of the webinars soon too. So the world goes round, and we all end up collaborating. So thank you, Ed, for being part of the community. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and advice and your situation today. And for those of you who want to know where to find more of this, you can find it on our YouTube channel. We'll continue to do more and more for the members, and more and more publicly. Yenna membership will be free for 2 months very shortly, so keep an eye out for that during the coronavirus, thanks to amazing supporters like Ed, who I know backed our campaign, so thank you. But thanks again, Ed, and yeah, we'll catch up with you again soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much.